And I think I asked this last week, but if it's possible to figure out how to rename the phone numbers so that we know who's connected to the phone numbers, that would be a great addition. So I'll just run down the list here and have everyone introduce themselves. And since we have at least one new board member, I think we should not just say our names and organizations, but also just sort of the industry that you're working in, or the scale, or the type of workers or workplaces that you're working with. Does that sound good? So I'm Chelsea Globitz with the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation. We're the umbrella organization for the AFL-CIO, which means that we represent unions from all industries and workers more broadly beyond just the unionized workforce. And I'll hand it over. The first one in line is Anna. Is it Anna or Anna?
It's Anna. Thanks for asking. I know it's confusing. Yes, I'm Anna. I use she, her pronouns. I work at Fair State Brewing Cooperative as the community manager. So I coordinate our events and membership and marketing and all of our engagement with community partners and coalition partners. And yeah, this is my first meeting, so I'm excited to be here.
Well, welcome. We're still almost a year into this, adapting to online, but we're getting there closely, slowly. Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley Boone. I work in the Civil Rights Department in the Labor Standards Enforcement Division.
And she keeps us all on track all the time, and we're very grateful for Ashley.
Thank you.
Brian Elliott.
Hi, this is Brian Elliott. I'm the State Council Director for the Service Employees International Union, Minnesota State Council. I use he, him pronouns.
May.
Hi there, I am May Brooks, and I work at the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, and we actually do what the title says. We do parks and we do rec and some other stuff, and about 90% or so of our workforce is unionized.
I have Chris.
Hi, Chris Lundy with Target, and I work in our Employee and Labor Relations Department.
Elise.
Hi, this is Elise Diederich. I work in state and local government affairs for Target, and I focus on employment and workforce issues. Target has 5 stores in Minneapolis, and our headquarters is downtown Minneapolis as well.
Ginger.
Hi, I'm Ginger, and I am an organizer with 15 Now, and we do grassroots community organizing around workers' rights.
And then I have a guest, a mysterious guest. Does anyone know if they are the guest?
I think it's me.
I see you, Kate, though. Well, let's go to you, Kate. Go ahead, Kate.
Oh, okay. I'm Kate Davenport, the co-president of Eureka Recycling. We're a nonprofit social enterprise. About our work staff is Teamsters. Also on the board of Main Street Alliance, which is progressive businesses in the Twin Cities.
And then Madeline?
Madeline Lohman with the Advocates for Human Rights, human rights organization based in Minneapolis, and I focus on labor trafficking and exploitation.
Wade.
Hi, Anna. Wade Lindbergh with Unite Here, Local 17, the hospitality union here in the Twin Cities. We represent workers in sports facilities, our convention centers, 26 union hotels, a few restaurants, and we've been working with you folks at Fair State.
Brian Walsh.
Hello and welcome, Anna. My name is Brian Walsh. I'm the Director of Labor Standards Enforcement for the city inside of the Civil Rights Department.
David.
Hi everyone, Dave Zaffron, Policy Aide to Councilmember Steve Fletcher, Ward 3, who's been a strong ally of the Workplace Advisory Committee all term. worked with all of you on the wage theft and freelance worker protection ordinances, and currently working with Wade and others on the right to recall ordinance coming out of the first meeting of the Downtown Workers Council. So exciting stuff.
Thank you all. And we have 3 phone numbers, one that ends in 10.
That's me, Kate.
Oh, okay. And then I have another phone number that ends in 46.
Yeah, that's Khadija Mohammed, and I work center for. I work with the Award Center for Organization for Award Center.
Great, thanks for joining. And a phone number that ends in 26.
Thank you. My name is Frank Reed. I'm from the Civil Rights Department. Good afternoon, everybody.
Nice to hear from you. So before we jump into all of the new business, Anna, do you want to do another introduction of yourself, or do you want to pass on that again? You're on the agenda. You're on the agenda.
I'm on the agenda. Yeah. Yeah, I can do just a quick intro of kind of what Fair State has been up to. As Wade mentioned, our workers are unionized now, which is awesome. By Unite Here, Local 17, and Shay has been wonderful. And we also this past year organized a coalition of fellow small businesses around the Safety for All budget amendment with, I have to say, extensive help from David. So thank you to him for that. It's fun to see you in person after sending a lot of emails back and forth. So yeah, those are kind of the two pieces relevant to this committee that we've been up to in the past year.
Great, and I look forward to connecting even more going forward. It's a pretty volatile moment in the history of Minneapolis, so and this committee is going to play an important role in how we move forward. So I appreciate it. Thanks for joining and being here. At this point, I think I'll hand it over to Brian. And Brian, do you mind just kind of facilitating the meeting? Because this is my first day back after being on leave, so I got the agenda and I can facilitate it. But Brian, do you mind just sort of handling it from here?
No problem. As long as the other Brian promises to help me navigate through the agenda, I think I
will.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. So, oh, you know what? We do have some new business before we dive into any substance and kind of get some updates on what has been going on since our last WAC meeting. I think, Ashley, you have some logistical formal business of the committee that, and you can explain it. I think it's the oaths. Am I right about that?
Correct. So since we had members who had to reappoint every new term, you have to do oaths, which we kind of was lacking on this because we haven't done this in quite a while. So that's totally my fault. So I'm just going to name off a few people, and I would just ask that you kind of repeat after me. So just repeat after the oath. Then once you guys do repeat after me, I'm going to email you the actual oath certificate for you to sign, and I'm going to send that to you through DocuSign. So if you can just sign that as soon as possible after the meeting or by tomorrow, that'd be great. And then I'll send that off to the clerk's office. If you wish to have a copy of your certificate, just let me know. So I'll notarize it and send you a copy. That's totally up to you if you want it.
And Ashley, am I right that this is like the very final step in being officially appointed to the committee by the city council and mayor? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Oops, sorry. I have a dog, by the way, and something's wrong with her, so sorry if she barks. So the people that I need to repeat after me is going to be David, Davis, Elise, Natalie, Wade, Ginger, Khadijah, and Chelsea. All right, so I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Minnesota,
the Constitution and the laws
Constitution
State
and
of
laws of the
Minnesota.
state of Minnesota,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Minneapolis,
and the
And the
charter
charter
and the charter and
of the
ordinance
city of
of the city of Minneapolis,
you know,
and that I will perform the duties of the office for the term
and I will perform
And I
the
will
and will
duties
perform the
of
duties
the
of
office
office
for the term
to which I have been appointed to the best of my ability.
to which I have been
to
appointed
which I have been
my
appointed
ability.
to the best of my ability.
Awesome. Welcome to the Minneapolis Workplace Advisory Committee.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
No problem.
Yay. That was never going to be awkward, and it was even
Right.
less awkward on Teams, right? Thank you, Ashley. I'll jump, I think, to the next item on the agenda, which is last Monday, if I'm not mistaken, the first ever meeting of the Downtown Workers Council. Actually, we had just a phenomenal turnout. I'll give a quick recap, and then if we could just go around maybe about any thoughts, observations, comments, or takeaways from the meeting, because I think we had a number of folks, actual WAC members there. I think I saw Elise there. I think Anna was there. I know Brian was there. Certainly Veronica was there. I should mention that Veronica is out, not at our meeting this evening, and she let us know she wouldn't be able to make it. But I'm probably forgetting some others. I know Frank Reed was there for sure. My boss, Director Frank Reed, was there. I was there. Ashley was there. Certainly Dave was there. Wade, of course, was there. So maybe I don't need to recap so much as I'll do a quick recap for anyone who wasn't there, and then maybe we can kind of go around popcorn style and give some thoughts or not if you if you share if you want to. But yeah, it was I think really successful. There were upwards of almost 60 attendees, and the focus of the meeting, I think, was to highlight some frontline essential downtown workers and their experiences at this time in the pandemic, and just sort of highlight specifically from the worker perspective, lifting up some of their concerns, both with either continuing to work or reopening, or not working and looking forward to reopening, and what how to do that safely, I think, were some of the underlying themes. But we had an SEIU member give some testimony, a SATUL member give some testimony. We had a Unite Here member give some testimony. And then Dave's boss, Councilmember Fletcher, attended. The Mayor Fry attended, and Councilmember Goodman, the other downtown council member, all three attended and were very. I appreciated and was impressed with their level of engagement with both the committee and then obviously directly with the workers that were giving some thoughts about their experience and concerns. I'll pause there. Wade or Brian or anyone else, you have anything to add about either what happened or your thoughts about it?
Oh, Wade, do you want to go?
No, go ahead.
All right. Just FYI, I'm off camera because for some reason Teams just doesn't work with my camera on my computer, so I always end up just frozen, and then I get a message that Teams doesn't recognize my camera. So anyway, so last week, I mean, it was really powerful for our members who were there they did feel like they were heard. I added to the chat, Councilmember Cunningham was also there for part of the time. And, the stories that we were hearing were powerful stories. It was the reactions were positive from the mayor and council members. And, I think the demands that the workers put forward were pretty clear. I'm trying to find the document so I can come back to what was circulated, but unless Dave, you have that handy. So I'll come back to it. Go ahead, Wade.
I was gonna say Ashley emailed it out. Why is my thing delaying? Ashley emailed it out, so maybe she could post it in the chat too. I know you have it in your inbox, but if she can also, I'm not as familiar with Teams as I am Zoom. If you can post it in the chat or not.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess maybe I would just add that it seemed to me that the workers were really kind of jazzed to meet each other, and I think that really picked up on the idea that it's about workers talking to workers across these different industries in downtown, and that that in some ways they have a lot in common, but an amount of kind of like mutual respect for what each of them do, and how they really kind of contribute to this downtown economy, and having the mayor and those council folks on, I think, was a message to them that they matter and people were listening.
Great. Any other thoughts from folks who were at the meeting? I think I see a hand up from Ginger. Please go right ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I really agree with the assessments that Brian and Wade gave. And I thought it was really a useful meeting to be part of. And I thought it was great that we really focused in on the recall ordinance, and I know that that was the main kind of focus and goal of the meeting, and having that, I think, clearly communicated was really useful. I also wanted to raise that I know I had invited a couple of bus drivers that I know, transit workers who are associated or members of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1005. And, they are downtown a lot of the time on their routes as well. And they were really, I think, into getting to hear from other downtown workers. And I know would like to be part of conversations going forward, which I thought was really useful. I also wanted to ask, I know kind of near the end of the meeting, I had to leave a little early. And it was kind of put to Mayor Fry a bit like squarely about what direct action he was going to take out of the meeting. And I was wondering if someone could report back on that. Like, was he planning on kind of leading on the recall ordinance, or what was the direct kind of result of some of those last questions? Thanks.
This is Wade. In general, I think all the council folks, Goodman, Cunningham, and Fletcher all seem supportive of, certainly, and Councilperson Fletcher's kind of leading the charge on the downtown workers committee. I think I heard the mayor say that we should be doing anything possible right now to help the downtown workers. He didn't really expand beyond that, but I heard him say that. And I thought that Councilperson Goodman appeared really open to the idea of a committee like this and willing to flesh it out. And then I'm not sure, did we mention that SWAP was there as well? So BB was there for SWAP, and so we got to hear from them as well.
Great. Ginger, I think you still have your hand up unless you raised it again. And then anyone else have some thoughts or takeaways? I guess I sort of have some of the same questions as Ginger about next steps or next steps, next meetings, sort of the takeaways and action items. I think the recall ordinance is certainly on a much much farther down the line than some of the other things that some of the other points that the workers had raised.
Well, and Brian,
Hey, Brian, this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, even today, there was an email going around to kind of schedule next steps. As I think it may be even early next week, if I remember right. So more to come.
Great, thanks, Wade. Director Reed, were you going to jump in there?
Oh, that was clumsy. Sorry about that, everybody. I want to reiterate how powerful the statements were that were given by the workers, and the level of solidarity that I felt from what I was hearing. And I was wondering, as next steps, I was wondering if there was a mechanism where I could speak to some of those folks myself. I think it's always important to get that sort of grounding in the work that we're doing. Like we said, we're working on this recall ordinance. I would like to, if possible, have an opportunity to get some personal understanding of what people are experiencing to sort of inform the work. I was wondering what people thought of that, if there was something that I could sort of plug into to make something like that happen. Thanks.
This is Brian with SEAU. I would say that's a great idea. And I know we would be those of us who were helping to recruit workers for last week, I know would be very happy to bring folks together for a conversation with you.
Great. I'm all about it. I think that would be really important for me in the department, and just to give us a deeper understanding of what people are experiencing out there right now. I mean, we're in the middle of this thing still, and we've got a ways to go. But the more that we can put meat to the bones of what people are experiencing, the better I think we'll be able to react. So thank you. You can reach me through Brian or email or give me a call, however you'd like to do that, and we can work together to make something happen.
Will do.
Great. Well, I think that's a good segue into the next agenda item, unless anyone has anything else. And the next agenda item is really the recall ordinance. And sorry, let me pull the agenda back up, make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, so the recall ordinance. And I don't know, Dave or Wade, do you kind of want to maybe give us an update?
Yeah, it's fair to say I think Dave and I are probably going to just ping pong off of each other on this, and we still don't have a final draft to share with the MWAC today. We're still working through a few.
Wade,
yeah.
You're kind of hard to hear.
Oh, all right. Is that helpful?
But we can hear you. We'll make it out. So,
Dave, do you want to just kind of hit it off, and I'll see if I can fix something here.
Sure. Yeah. So as Wade was saying, we don't have a draft to share right now, but we should pretty soon here. Continuing to work with staff on addressing a couple lingering questions, and then we should have something to post. And then in terms of process, we've been working with Wade on this to try to make sure that we can move this quickly, since it needs to take effect quickly if it's going to help the folks that it's intended to affect or help out. So I think the goal here is that it will come back for a public hearing pretty soon, and then be able to take effect, relatively quickly after passage. Procedurally, last Thursday, it got referred to staff. And so at the next public health and safety meeting, it could come back and a public hearing could be set for one cycle out. And if that timeline holds, then the public hearing would be on Thursday, March 4. So that's tentative, but I think that it's fairly likely that that's the timeline that we'll be able to hit at this point in time. And then, Wade, do you want to walk through highlights of the language? Were you able to fix your audio?
Sure. You guys can, is that better? Okay. I heard some kind of snow in the background earlier. I'm not sure what it was. So yeah, the ordinance does cover hotels in the city of Minneapolis and event centers. Hotels are 50 rooms or more at this point. And event centers are 2,000 fixed seats or 50,000 square feet of space. And basically that provides the coverage. And I'm not sure that we've actually really shared why we need this timeline. And I will say part of it does fall back on collective bargaining. And so if we look at the middle of March 15th, that's when the EOs kicked in. And so in most of our collective bargaining agreements and with a lot of labor unions, we do have recall rights that tend to run, at least in our contracts, 12 months. And so we're fast approaching that 12-month mark. I will share that we do have the ability to have extensions in our CBAs. We can ask for those extensions with the employers, and generally that would be achieved. But for workers in the larger part of the industry that work in the convention center or in sports facilities or in non-union hotels, which are in non-union hotels, that's about 65% of the market. Those workers simply don't always have recall rights. And so really, this is something to advocate for all of those workers and could have an impact on thousands of workers here in the city of Minneapolis. Just within our membership, there are about 1,500 hotel workers that live in the city of Minneapolis. So if that's helpful, I'm not sure that we ever really explained why we're under such a tight timeline to accomplish this. And basically the process is fairly straightforward, and Brian or Dave, please chime in as you need. But basically what happens is a hotel operator, for example, needs to, in a meaningful way, reach out to a laid off, furloughed, or a worker that they're even totally separated from at this point, and offer them their work back as business levels allow. And so the employer reaches out to the worker. The worker has 7 calendar days to respond, and then also if the job offer is made, they have 7 calendar days to accept the offer. There's also a contingent that says, what if that worker's specific position isn't available anymore, which is going to be, at least in some cases, a likelihood in the industry. It's going to change quite a bit, and workers aren't going to come back right away. There's a fallback that says that worker should still be offered work at their old hotel or their employer, and if they can be retrained into another position. And of course, workers are going back to prefer that old position at their wages and their benefit levels that they had before. Around enforcement, it does land in the Office of Civil Rights, and so more work for Brian and the crew. I think that and again, Brian and Dave chime in. I think around enforcement, no surprise that a lot of it looks like some of our other labor standard ordinances, even including some of the penalties and fee schedules are very similar to some of the other labor standards ordinances that we've achieved here at MWAC. And then there's also a really I think a really good piece of the ordinance is around the outreach that will be done between CPED and the Office of Civil Rights, educating and reaching out to the employers so that they're getting information that's accurate about all the workers that have been laid off, furloughed, or that have received warn notices over the past year. And those records will be retained, of course, and and use going forward.
I'll just note under enforcement, Wade, too, that there is a provision that allows civil rights to let a licensing body of the city, a licensing office of the city, know that they're subject to this enforcement in civil rights, so that licensing body, be it business licensing, who's the most likely with hotels, for example, can take licensing police actions that they are already allowed to do under our licensing ordinances. So that is part of the ordinance as well.
And then we are still working on language around collective bargaining. There is some disagreement between the city attorney and what we're trying to achieve. And so that's still a work in progress. I've got confidence, though, that we're going to have the right language in the end to make sure that all workers are covered under the ordinance if they don't have recall rights. And so we're still working on that. And then I think that one of the questions, if folks saw early language or early drafts, we were talking about the ordinance at sunsetting on December 31st of 2022. And there is a thought that there is new language in there that we're looking at that we're pretty comfortable with, that the clock would start ticking on the ordinance. Of course, it would be enacted around March 15th, but then the clock would start ticking on its termination the day after the executive orders are turned off, right? So the governor's executive order or the public health mayoral executive order. And and some of the thoughts around that is that the executive orders aren't really going anyplace soon. And so that you may actually be able to extend beyond December of 2022. There's also a mechanism in there where it can go back to the city council and for potential extensions offered by the council, and around reporting in the Office of Civil Rights, no later than 60 days before the sunset of the ordinance, whenever that might be, a report. There'll be a report filed that shall include, and I think I'll just read it. The report shall include, but need not be limited to, a discussion of the implementation and enforcement of the article, including the number of violations, the number of employees reinstated, the penalties that have been assessed, and any other information available to the director that promotes the goals and purposes of the ordinance, and then further to make a recommendation regarding its exemption, or its furtherance or its expiration. So that for at least us at Unite Here, that gives us confidence that many workers will find a path back to work and back to the work that they knew with this ordinance. And Dave mentioned the timelines around the council, that there would be potentially calling for hearing on the ordinance on February 18th, with a public hearing on the 4th, and then final passage on the 12th.
That would, with final passage, after final passage of anything that the council does, the mayor has a week to sign it. And then right now, there's an effective date on this ordinance of May 1st, which gives civil rights time to write rules and get ready for it, and work with business licensing to make sure we can get the word out to affected businesses, et cetera. But it's basically effective kind of retroactively to March 13, 2020 as sort of the date at which we're looking at when people started getting laid off. So that's kind of the specific date that's the primary hook for it.
And again, there's certainly space between that March 15th and May 1st, but the rules do need to be written. And also in this industry, unfortunately, workers aren't necessarily going to be coming back on April 1st or even May 1st. You know, it's really going to be a long haul here yet in 2021. And the further that the further we can push this potential timeline out is going to be really helpful, even into, you know, potentially midway of 2023. That's when we're really going to see the hotel industry and the conferencing and maybe even the sports venues turning back on.
I have kind of to pull back out a little bit. I have kind of a question if anybody has a sense of this, and Wade, you might have some thoughts about it, or maybe Dave, but just about not that you have a crystal ball, but the numbers or the amounts of complaints that we might, not exact numbers, the amounts of complaints that civil rights might expect to encounter. And I think what I'm really asking about is sort of the incentives that that big hotel and convention center employees are employers are weighing. And I'm thinking specifically about sort of the benefit of bringing back workers you already had because they know their jobs. So sort of like, why would I not want to recall my previous employees? And then, so I see the benefit to doing that, but what would be the benefit potentially of not complying or not recalling former employees?
You know, look, Brian, I think that it's kind of a mixed bag. I think that there are hotel operators and events operators that are, you know, certainly going to do the right thing without being asked or told to. But there's another bucket of employers out there that the best thing they could do to protect themselves was to totally shut down their operation. There's another set of employers who may have kept their rooms business open, but their food and beverage has changed from fine dining to grab and go. And so I think it's just a really complicated process reopening. And again, the ordinance calls for, you know, you're not required to bring all your employees back on May 1st. It says business levels allow. And I think even within each operation, different hotels are going to turn different parts of their operation on at different times. And so if there's some kind of orderly path back to work for that incumbent workforce, I think that's really important. But I think we also have to remember that there are workers who are totally separated from their employers now. And there may be employers that honestly just want to bring workers back in a different way and maybe for less. So.
Great, thanks.
This is Brian Elliott. I would add maybe a little more bluntly also than what Wade was saying, that you know, as you pointed out, a lot of employers are going to go about bringing their workers back as they're able. The thing, though, that we're hearing from some workers who've been organizing, who were either in the process of organizing a union before the pandemic or who have been particularly outspoken about COVID safety measures on the work site is that we want to make sure that the pandemic is not an opportunity that employers are able to use to selectively not rehire folks who are organizing and advocating for their fellow workers. And that, just to be frank, has, we're hearing a lot of that from ROC, that folks have been, over the course of the pandemic, selectively recalled in cases where workers have been recalled, like the overwhelming number of workers have been recalled, except those who were advocating for better safety precautions or for a union. So just frankly, we want to make sure that they're not that this isn't being used as an opportunity to fail to hire folks back because of their advocacy.
Got it. That's really helpful. Thank you, Brian. Well, does anyone else have any questions substantively about the ordinance or the ordinance provisions or how it would operate? Or
Well, I'll just add that I'm hopeful that we can help advocate not just for like this passage of this piece, but like how do we expand this into other workplaces, and how do we expand these protections more generally and more broadly, not even when we're in the middle of a pandemic. But so how do we take this like idea of workplace security, recall, and expand it both in this moment and going forward. So I think this is a good first step, but whatever we can do to include other industries and workplaces in the coming months is going to be critical, especially as the vaccine rolls out and the industries change and the scale of work changes. So that's what I'm excited about.
Well, and even to that end, and so there's no confusion, Unite Here and SEIU are working on a piece of legislation at the Capitol right now. It's House File 39 that Andrew Carlson is carrying for us. And in fact, we have another committee stop tomorrow. And then we should be heading to the floor that covers hotel workers, event workers, and building service workers statewide. So if, just imagine hotels and convention centers in a number of cities around the state, and other large kind of commercial operations and building services. And we're doing really well in the House, and we may even get a hearing in the Senate. But, I don't think that Brian and I are totally confident that we'll see final passage there. And so if folks are reading about state legislation, and to Chelsea's point, we're trying to figure out how to expand this quickly, particularly around COVID. But I hear what you're saying about working on this because there will be other COVIDs and there are going to be other challenges in front of us. And I want to thank Ashley for sending out the recall report that I'm sorry, I thought I'd asked her to do a couple weeks ago, and then I just realized you folks just got it today. That really kind of frames some of the importance around just who's impacted in these industries. Majority women and people of color. They're really being damaged by the effects of COVID. In the workplace and perhaps in their healthcare and healthcare delivery as well. So if folks have questions specifically about the report, take a look at it and feel free to dial me up. I
just have one other question, unless unless anyone else wants to jump in, kind of going from zooming way out to then zooming way in, and this is probably too deep in the weeds. But I'm curious about the what anyone knows, and Wade, you would probably be our resident expert about the sort of the structure of the hotel industry and the hotel business. And I think that there's a lot more subcontracting of different hotel functions than there used to be. I'm curious, it's a really specific question, but I'm curious about hotel housekeepers. Because to me, the housekeepers, the hardworking people who are cleaning every single room every single day, are really sort of the heart and soul and kind of bread and butter of the hotel industry. I'm curious if that function is ever subcontracted out to separate companies.
Yeah, Brian, it's true. And I know I've told you and Frank before that our industry has changed dramatically in the past 20 years. Particularly 9/11 had a huge impact on the industry and changed kind of the way it's structured. There really are very few kind of hometown owned operations anymore, or even kind of like the majority of hotels are actually owned by REITs, real estate investment trusts, or hedge funds, and they in turn hire management companies like Marriott or Hilton or Hyatt, who actually own very few hotels. Those hotel corporations own some of their own hotels, but really manage hotels for other people. And then even under that, you can have an AC Marriott in downtown Minneapolis that's owned by a hedge fund, managed by Marriott, and then they subcontract all of the jobs out to a housekeeping company and to a front desk company, and they subcontract the restaurant. And so virtually it's a hotel with no employees. And this ordinance does have a piece that actually addresses at least some of that in successor language in the definitions of what an employer is. And so particularly around COVID, many hotels have been restructured again or sold. The hotel industry, we always say, is not the hotel industry, it's real estate. And so that's even addressed in parts of the ordinance.
Great, thanks, Wade. Those are all my thoughts and questions right now. Does anyone else want to jump in here, or we're coming towards the end of our agenda and towards the end of our meeting, which is perfectly okay to end a little bit early. You're all very busy people. But before I sort of start to wrap things up or turn that direction, does anyone else have any questions, concerns, thoughts, reactions to anything that Wade is presenting here that Chelsea has raised, or Brian or Dave, either about the right to recall ordinance, substance or process, or ways the committee can get involved, or stepping back to the how it fits into the larger work of the ongoing Downtown Workers Council and its meetings. Okay, well, Chelsea, maybe I'll kick it back over to you if you want to wrap us up with some thoughts and catch anything that I might be missing.
Yeah, well, I think all of us here in our different roles and capacities have spent the last year just doing rapid response, literally just reacting to what's in front of us. So I think in the next month or so here, it would be good for us to have a meeting that doesn't have a lot of business on it and just sort of think about, this is the new era that we're in. This is where workplaces are right now. This is where small businesses are right now. This is where the workforce is right now. The economy is changing around us. So what can we focus on in the next year or so? And so I hope to bring that to one of these WAC conversations soon, because we've been so busy with just complete rapid response, understandably so. And I'm really, I look up to everybody on this call and on this committee who are just doing so much work in this moment. So that would be my closing comments, is like, I'd like to bring that conversation back to the forefront. I know we've had some good facilitation in the past around that, so it might be good to dedicate a little bit of time to that, in my opinion. And I know we heard a lot about two very specific issues today, so, and we might have glazed over the other updates, but I would open it up now if people have updates or questions that they wanted to share for the group, either what's happening right now, or things that they would want to be a part of that planning conversation.
So this is Brian with SEAU. I just wanted to raise that one of the other items, Wade mentioned that we're also working at the state level on worker recall. One of the other items on the list that I put in the chat, that was sort of the headline version of the slightly more detailed doc that Ashley posted. One of the other items is emergency leave. And we are also working on that at the state level. It's gotten a hearing. We're waiting for a fiscal note. But it's also being worked on at the federal level. It is part of the proposal that President Biden has put forth. The concern is that there were a lot of frontline workers who both were excluded from the federal benefits requirements passed way back in March, and who were unable to work remotely, and so have been on the job for the entirety of the pandemic. And when they've had any exposure at all, they have rightly had to quarantine. But unfortunately, most of at least my members burned through their sick time part way through their first quarantine, and now they're on their second or third or fourth quarantine. And we really want to make sure that workers have an opportunity to stay home when they are sick or have been exposed to COVID. And so we're pushing also with council members here in the city about to have a conversation about extending leave for workers who have to quarantine and who are unable to work remotely and continue earning a paycheck while they are quarantining.
Ooh, thanks for highlighting that, Brian. You just triggered a bunch of thoughts in my brain, just because so much of what labor standards enforcement in the Civil Rights Department, so much of our work is in sick and safe time and enforcement of that particular ordinance. You just hit on a bunch of really, really big issues, and you mentioned the kind of the holes in the federal coronavirus leave law that was passed way back in March, that it exempted healthcare workers, broadly speaking, and employers with over 500 employees, broadly speaking. And then you mentioned, as did the employee that represented SEIU at the Downtown Workers Council meeting last week, mentioned the burning through the all the sick leave and coronavirus leave that they have available, and now they're on their second or third, like you said, Brian, second or third quarantine. And what do? And that's a real public health risk to their health, but then obviously a risk to everyone if they're coming to work. So thank you for saying that. And I've noticed, and I was in a meeting, I'm occasionally in a meeting with other jurisdictions, and it occurs to me, and I remembered as you were talking, Brian, that one thing, I think I heard them, someone it was either Philadelphia or maybe it was Seattle, a pretty simple idea of making the somehow making the federal coronavirus leave law, which is now optional as of January 1st, making it not making it somehow mandatory, because employers can opt into the federal law, which is then
Yes.
which then gives them some reimbursement through federal tax income tax credits to pay for coronavirus leave.
Yeah, the tax credits were extended, but the requirement wasn't. So employers who previously were required to offer it can still get tax credits if they choose to offer it, which is great. But I think the big concern is just in general, people who are workers who are completely left out because their employers either didn't offer it, either they, because their employers weren't required to offer it, and also chose not to offer it. There are, of course, employers who chose to offer a paid leave benefit beyond what was otherwise in their policies around quarantine. But really, it is when it comes down to it, it's about how do we make sure that people who have burned through, who are frontline workers who can't work remotely, like many of us on this call, certainly not all of us, but many of us on this call, and who've had to quarantine and burn through their existing PTO. How can we make it so that they're able to make that important decision to stay home and care for themselves or a loved one who either is suffering from COVID or has been exposed, without having to risk their job or being able to afford the necessities.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Other topics. What else is going on? These were heavy topics. Well, we'll work to make sure that we provide some framing questions in a few of the upcoming meetings. Maybe we just sprinkle in the framing and landscape questions more generally over the next couple, because this work isn't going anywhere, but I don't want to leave it on the back burner for too long. And I will ask if there's any final words. Okay, see none, I guess we will adjourn.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yes,
Thanks
have a
for
good night.
Bye.